Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining us. We're now at the education track of the Women in Cybersecurity Forum, part of siberXchange. When you think about this topic, we're going to be talking about creating a cyber-aware culture. And I want you to think about what do we mean by the term culture. You've often heard folks use terms such as a culture of innovation, a culture of thinking, a culture of sharing and participation. Between thinking of culture as an individual and as a group. We're going to go deep into what it means to making a community understand your vision around cybersecurity. You're joining me live from the beautiful St. Francis Center here in the town of Ajax. My name is Ali Hirji, and on behalf of the siberXchange Advisory Lead, of which I am the chair, I want to thank once again Mayor Sean Collier and his team, and Maddie and his team, for making this new normal possible. The center is on the land of the people of the Mississaugas of the Scugog Island First Nation. The land is protected under the Williams Treaties. While you were anticipating this session and waiting for it, you would have seen one of the images on the screen of Malala Yousafzai. And she said something which I think is a perfect introduction to the beginning of our session, where she says, with tools or with weapons, you can kill the terrorist, but with education, you can kill terrorism, that culture of terrorism. Culture, as most sociologists define it, is our values, our beliefs, our practices, our institutions, our shared values and perspectives. So my guests today, while they have individual approaches towards cybersecurity, they've gone down a journey of sharing their cybersecurity perspectives and making it into a culture, a shared culture. And that comes with its challenges. Anytime that you want someone to see your perspective and go against the grain, there are numerous roadblocks that you have to overcome. I'm pleased today to welcome three powerful women who will share with us how they went from individual champions in cybersecurity to shared cultural leaders in the world of cyber. Welcome to the panel, Ikjot, Marilyn, and Heather. Marilyn, I'll start off with you and ask you to introduce yourself and tell us the one reason why you became interested in the world of cyber.
Hi, I'm Marilyn Crawford. I'm Regional Councillor here in Ajax for Ward 1, where St. Francis Center sits right in my ward. Why did I get interested in cybersecurity? Because honestly, it was the farthest thing from my brain. So I decided I wanted to learn all I could about it.
The farthest thing from my brain, reaching for those areas that we haven't gone to before. And that always takes courage. It always takes a community to take you forward. But you began on your own. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that as we move forward. So thank you for that lovely introduction, Marilyn. Ikjot will hop on the 401 and speed through and land ourselves in Windsor and have you introduce yourself. Recently attained your PhD. Congratulations on achieving your doctoral level of studies. You're now a faculty member as well. Tell us what brought you into the world of cybersecurity.
Thank you, Ali, and I'm so excited to be here on this panel. My name is Ikjot Saini, and I recently joined as an assistant professor at University of Windsor. And my research expertise is V2X security. So I'll just give you a brief from a student point of view. When I was a student, I was interested in, out of all the courses, specifically in the networks and then network security. Then I realized that you can make a great impact because it democratizes everything, and you can bring internet to everybody. So what you can do to do something regarding the privacy and security, then I get into the V2X, which is connected vehicles. So I'm really excited to join the forces with the automotive from the cybersecurity. So because you can make real impact on the safety of the vehicles and then take care of not just safety, but also the security of the communication. So that's why I'm so interested in this.
I think that parallel that you drew between safety and security is one that we definitely want to get into, because often folks, when they think about security, they think about physical security. And slowly but surely, this is coming into our nomenclature where we are talking about cybersecurity as a matter of citizen safety. But I don't think we've come to that point where we understand what it means when a breach truly happens. So I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit more about that awareness that you've created, not just in Windsor, but across the world in many cases, especially with smart mobility. Thank you, Ikjot, for that lovely introduction. Heather, no stranger to the siberXchange platform, you've been very instrumental in shaping a culture of reward, a culture of recognition in cybersecurity. Tell our audience a little bit more about the work that you do and why it's so important to you.
Sure, Ali. Thank you. I mean, as you know, I've worked in tech my entire career, and these past several years focusing specifically on cybersecurity. And it's one thing to work in cybersecurity, but there's this whole other level that many of us have kind of achieved, which is this incredible passion for building a cyber-aware culture. And I believe that everyone in the world deserves to be safe and feel safe, and also that everyone deserves equal opportunity to work in this exciting field. And building a cyber aware culture or community plays a big role in both of those passions of mine. And so I've been fortunate, as I said, to work in tech my entire career, and to have been able to build quite a large network. And in fact, my role at IBM is a global role, so I have colleagues and friends around the world, and I just do what I can, what I feel is right, and what I believe I can do to bring people together, to build the awareness that we're going to talk about, and hopefully inspire others to at least learn something about cybersecurity, if not get into the field of cybersecurity.
Thank you so much. And I think it's very important for our audience to recognize the fact that when you're building community, I've always maintained this position that community is not built by chance. Community is built well and truly through connectivity, through connections. There are tools with which we build community. And I want to start off with Marilyn first, and then we'll go to Heather and to Ikjot, and we'll oscillate from there around how Marilyn began to build awareness around cybersecurity. Now, Marilyn, forgive me for doing this, but in my previous session, I began with a statement which is well captured in the bicycle that's hanging on your wall behind you, where I said that we were talking about the status quo and shattering the status quo. And I said something to the effect of a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle, right? It really doesn't matter. You can chart your own territory and you can chart your own path. But Marilyn, when you began the conversation, and forgive me for being direct, but I think it's important that our audience realize what we mean by building a culture. When you started to talk about cybersecurity, did your community members or friends, not just in Ajax around the world, be like, Marilyn, really? You're going to talk to us about cyber? How did you build trust?
Well, it's interesting because one of my colleagues that I work with came from the IT field, and the biggest joke is that he's not even involved in this. I'm the one that struggled trying to remember my password on my computer, and I'm the one that's talking about this. That's the funny thing about all of this. But I think, to be honest with you, because I'm not an expert in this field, I think that it speaks to the fact that you can get involved in this. It speaks to the fact that you don't have to be like incredibly uber intelligent like my colleagues are, but that you only have to be open to learn and to be educated. So I think the starting point for my journey was the AI series that we started last year, and it not only opened my mind to different aspects of technology, but I watched my community start to really take a strong interest in cybersecurity. So it ranged from businesses to seniors to children, and it was just before COVID. It was just starting to evolve, and we were talking about, how do we get these? How do we educate our children in this, and how do we get involved in a community that, for the most part, in government is kind of on its own. We're on our own, but how do we involve us in that community in a cybersecurity kind of fashion?
I think you've always brought up the important aspect of engagement and consultation with your community before you introduce an idea, and creating forums for them to experience new forms of thought, new forms of opportunities. And I think that opportunity and engagement piece and consulting piece with the community is something that Heather has done really well in terms of shaping programming and sort of get people to understand the values around cybersecurity. Heather, when you were shaping these programs to get young girls engaged in cybersecurity, diverse groups engaged, what kind of consultations did you go through? I know with your situation at IBM, you have some of the best minds, not just in Canada, but around the world. But I believe you engaged academic partners as well. What was that engagement like to build this resilient value?
You're right, Ali. I mean, I am fortunate. I have access to an incredible number of resources. And so when we started our Cyber Day for Girls program, which is what you're referring to, we were able to build upon some existing resources. So we didn't have to start from scratch. But honestly, we started small. We piloted the program 4 years ago nearly now. And started with small groups right here in North America. The first event being in Markham at our headquarters. But as kind of the word got out, it became very evident that both within IBM and outside of IBM, there were people who wanted to participate, people who wanted to volunteer, people who wanted to partner with us to build this cybersecurity awareness that we were trying to build and still are trying to build amongst preteen and teenage girls. And part of that has been partnering with academic institutions in various locations, partnering with various conferences, or in fact doing both at the same time. So for example, last fall when I was at the annual NICE conference in Phoenix, Arizona, we held a Cyber Day for Girls at the ASU West campus. So there is no end to the number of people and organizations who are willing to come together to build this cyber-aware culture that we're talking about here today.
I think that piece of multitasking, which is really at the root of most geniuses, and just sort of using conferences as an avenue to do some out-of-the-box training and to bring in folks who typically wouldn't come into conferences, is something I was introduced to a little earlier before talking to you with Farouk Nair, who's actually just walked into the studio, and I'll have some conversations with him later on, is this aspect of, we were using the CISO forum last year, for example, as a means to bring in folks that have never engaged in cybersecurity before, but giving them a room, giving them a feeling of how they can be involved. And I think that aspect of what Virginia Woolf calls a room of one's own is very important. And we'll come to that very shortly. So thank you for that exposition. I'm going to go to Ikjot and just park the two perspectives we just got and focus a little bit on your career. Myself, a PhD candidate, I plan to finish in this lifetime, and we'll park that on its side there. A lot of us, even academics, we're infamous for just putting on our headphones and our heads down and getting our work done, and that's it, right? When did you decide to take off the headphones and say, this is something I need to talk about, and you started to build the groups that you did in Windsor? Not only was this a new topic for although very driven in automotive practices, this was a new topic, but you really were on your own when you began. When did you decide that this is something I want to talk about, this is something I want to champion?
So that's a really good question, Ali. So since you mentioned its academic journey is really an isolating journey, it will leave you have to leave everything behind for a certain time to just really focus, heads down, and focus on what you're doing.
Please don't say this to Mehdi, because if he hears that I'm going to block him out, he will be very, very dissatisfied. Anyways, carry on.
So for some time, I was doing that, and I felt like there's a real need for me to get in touch with people who are doing the same thing that I'm doing, collaborate, network, need to know more. And unfortunately, I'm not sure what it is, good luck, bad luck, but I was the only person doing that at that time here in this region, was focused purely on this. And I was missing two components. One, somebody to talk to as a female. Another one was at a professional level or as a student, you really want to discuss your research with multiple groups and really want to communicate it in the security terms, right? So those challenges both were my challenges. And then last year, sometime in middle of the year, I realized that we need to start a group. And I was offered this opportunity to start a student chapter here. And I just didn't even think twice. And I said yes. And I accepted the opportunity and I started the group. And I realized that after that, that how few females are there in computer science. And forget about cybersecurity, it's a STEM issue majorly. So we started from there and we introduced this to multiple groups, not just computer science, engineering. We went down to community and we've broken the other barriers as well. So even though it says women in cybersecurity, we need to foster a culture here, a mindset, so that we can shift it from earlier it was just digital. Now it needs to be cyber safe as well, more secure. And it's more about the mindset than anything else. And coming from a research background and cybersecurity, it just gave me another push that I really want to network and want to engage and communicate my research as well. So I think that's something you might be thinking as well, to communicate your research too.
Absolutely. You've unraveled, as any fantastic doctor would do in the world of academics. You've unpacked volumes in a couple of seconds, and you've given me some really good material to work with. I want to go back to Marilyn, and then Ikjot will come to you, and then go to Heather, because I think that conversational journey will make sense. And Ikjot, you brought up the aspect of students, and that lends me to think about the role that we as individuals play in shaping culture. And Marilyn, one of the things that you did very quickly is identify champions in your vicinity that you could partner with. Within a month or so of the AI and Ajax series, you realized data security was a big issue. You realized stuff like, what happens when I post that picture on Facebook and suddenly Facebook tells me how I'm going to look 50 years from now, or something to that effect. You were alerted and aware to the realities of how data is parsed and what some of the security concerns there are. Within a month and a half, you immediately signed up to run the Global Cyber Olympics. And you found champions like Maddie himself, but you found others as well. What was the importance of aligning yourself with these champions? And how did that help your message get across, especially with the Global Cyber Olympics?
Well, it validates it. So when you start being able to align yourself with companies like siberX, EC Council, IBM. I mean, all of a sudden now you're not just a tiny little Ajax trying to educate your citizens on cybersecurity. Now all of a sudden you've got the validation of having these very, very strong companies and businesses that's their life. And so all of a sudden it kind of makes people straighten their back and go, oh, maybe there is something to this. So I think it's extremely important that we have these partners all the time.
And these partnerships have also not prevented you, Heather, at IBM from partnering with different organizations. Often, and forgive me if this is a bit of a grave assumption, often we find that private sector corporations tend to stay insulated within themselves and keep their bag of tricks and their secret sauce to themselves. But that's not prevented you, Heather. You form partnerships not just with other companies, but international ones as well. How's that process been like for you, and why is that so important?
Well, I have to say I'm very fortunate to work for a company that believes very much in giving back to community. As IBMers, for example, we're encouraged to volunteer. And so in my case, in recent years, a lot of nearly all of my volunteering, of course, has indeed centered around cybersecurity and more particularly around women in cybersecurity. So, you know, for me, working for a company whose values align with my own or vice versa has been very important and has been critical to the success of everything that I do. You know, in other words, I work for a company that's very supportive of everything that I do for the community and building partnerships with others.
I think great companies are the ones that are able to find that balance between, the company shaping the people, but the people shaping the company as well. And this is something that, myself being on the advisory board for siberXchange, having engaged with other IBMers, that willingness to support. And I really thank you, Heather, not only for taking the time, but by also helping me with finding other speakers as well. I don't think our audience quite appreciates with how many engagements are happening. You need that level of influence. You need that level of trust. And Heather, the recommendations that you've made for us, the connections, I really appreciate it because it allows us to build community. And I will talk more about community towards the end. There was one element that you brought up there about volunteerism and putting in time and not necessarily knowing what you're going to get out of it, but putting in the time. And Ikjot, I want to bring this to you because when you began your groups and you began discussions around automotive security, et cetera, you were asking students, put in the time, come to our sessions. And really, when you're doing conferences back in BC before Corona, when we were doing in-person sessions and conferences, you have to tell them sometimes they have to pick up tables, sometimes they have to sit at registration desks. Was that a bit of a challenge for you in terms of getting buy-in for people to support something without any direct monetary gain? Ikjot?
No, actually, once they realize why they are doing it, they would be happy to do it. So I think once you give them a proper why and foster an environment, they would be happy to do. And it was not like somebody was monitoring them or asking them to do anything. They would just volunteer. We are right now in a position here that our students here learning on their own because of COVID situation. And they offer us, we can give a workshop on certain things. If somebody is learning, we can help them out. So they are volunteering for the study groups, they're volunteering their time. Because I believe like our board here did a really good job in engaging them in a way so that they can communicate. It's more about giving back. By teaching, you learn more. That's what it was. I think that worked really well.
I couldn't have said that better. To teach is to learn, and that's one of the reasons that despite being in part of my PhDs, I continue to look for opportunities to teach because that's where the most learning happens. And I don't think students quite know how much they shape the minds of their profs when we're in the classroom. Ikjot, if I can keep the conversation with you, your group around automotive cybersecurity has now expanded to international relations. You've got relations with major cybersecurity and automotive groups in Germany, if I'm not mistaken. Can you enlighten our audience a little bit about what that is and how they could get involved with you?
Okay, so that's a separate group, which is Automotive Security Research Group. It's more focused, and it's again a nonprofit initiative, built again to have community engagement because we don't have enough people coming together, and they are mainly separate in different continents, countries working on their own. And automotive security itself is a diverse domain itself. So we wanted to bring people together from different domains and start the conversation. It's just the first beginning point. It has three major pillars: knowledge sharing, networking, collaboration. So I think what's going on right now, we're trying to bring people and kind of create the culture, exactly what we are talking right now, create a culture and a mindset for the future mobility. So that's what we're doing, and engaging not just students, but industry from automotive and from IT and cybersecurity.
Absolutely. I think, when you're trying to do something big and achieve something great, the first major step is getting started. So, I commend you, most folks, and believe me, you have to be in those shoes to know what it's like to be in an academic shoes. But once a lot of folks finish their dissertation, they do take it easy, but you've been an exception to the rule. So kudos to you. I want to work with this aspect of international groups and recognition. And Heather, we'll start off with you, and then we'll go to Marilyn, and then come back to Ikjot. Heather, I'm taken back to that moment a day before we went into lockdown at Women in Cyber. We weren't shaking hands then. We were elbow bumping. And I remember when I had a few seconds to breathe and I was just visiting my students, you came to me and you gave me a little something to put on my coat, and you said, wear this because it shows that you're an ally. You've been very strong on recognition and creating symbols. I asked this in the previous session. We have like cyber heroes and cyber this and cyber that. You've really formulated an animated culture around this. What was the thinking there, and what's the return been like on that?
Yeah, boy. I think sometimes the things that happen, like, giving you that little, that Be an Ally ribbon, I can't take credit for that, actually. Another woman that I know really is responsible for that symbol. But, things like that, if you plant the seed, it grows, right? So, in fact, I picked up a bunch of extra ribbons, and I carry them with me everywhere I go, to every conference that I go, and I'm just doing my part to help spread the word about the importance of allyship, along with everything else that we are doing in the industry to build cybersecurity awareness, skills gap awareness, gender gap awareness, etc. It's it's all kind of part and parcel of the same challenge that we face in cybersecurity. Without enough people in the workforce, it's really hard to fill the jobs, obviously, and it's difficult to address the gender gap that we have. So if we want to fill the funnel, we have to build the awareness amongst all people.
Absolutely, and I think this aspect of building the funnel and awareness is one that we really need to not just impress upon our private sector leaders and our practitioners, but even our government friends. And you've heard me say this before, that I'm a big fan of not just celebrating the harvest that we reap, but the seeds that we plant, and the seeds of ideas and the seeds of thought. Everything begins with those thoughts. So I really appreciate that simple gesture of coming to someone at a conference and saying, here, you should wear this. I think that takes an amount of courage. Sure, you had a friendship with me, so you could do that, but it wasn't just me. Everybody that came to you did that. And that simple act of sharing, and again, you did it in a socially distant manner, so well done to you. But that simple act of having something to give someone, physical as well, I think is so crucial when you're trying to create that cyber culture. At the AI Hub, for example, a lot of folks would look at us. We have the debugging duck, and they'd say, "Oh, what's this duck?" And I was like, well, you know what? It'll get you to remember us. And then that summer, when people were still vacationing, people started taking it with them on vacation and say the AI Hub duck is here, and what have you. And it creates a conversation. It creates a symbol around which we gravitate. So thank you for doing those kind of things. And thank you for reminding us on the need for such tools that we can use. Marilyn, I'll come to you on this aspect of recognition and this aspect of celebrating your community members. One of the things that you've done very strongly is through your newsletters, through your social media outreach, is that you've constantly been telling stories. You've either, along with Mayor Collier, you've visited individuals and talked about their stories, you've celebrated them. How important has storytelling been to your journey of creating cyber awareness in Ajax?
It's critical because, again, I think there's this kind of spookiness about cybersecurity. And so when you're telling a story, it puts it more in a simplistic point of view where everyone can relate to it. Everybody has the ability to understand it. And it takes the spooky part of cybersecurity out of it. I think that just having those conversations with my community in all of our when we used to be able to have community meetings together physically, we would talk about it because people would say, well, what is that over there? What is this? And what is that? And even through the AI hubs, being able to connect with people that were interested in it, and then just being able to share those stories. It's critical. It makes it more tangible for the average person, I think.
Yeah, and going back to the Global Cyber Olympics Awards, which you had opened in lieu of Mayor Collier. If you remember, you had said something when the teams had come up to get their trophies along with President Don Lavisa, where you encouraged them to chant and you encouraged them to clap and you encouraged them to create their slogans. Because again, these are things that resonate with us, and that's what draws people into discussing different topics. And again, if you're looking to build a culture around cybersecurity, you need to know how to make it fun. And that gamification piece and you playing a part in Breach the Keep, etc., all ties into that when you want to create culture. There's a science and an art to creating culture, and I think you both, Heather and Marilyn, you've touched on some very important points. Which takes me back to Ikjot. And one of the fascinating things that I noticed, Ikjot, when we met for the first time, again at Canadian Women in Cybersecurity, thank you siberX for making it happen and for providing free tickets to a lot of students, so on and so forth. One of the things that you had told me was that it's not just IT students. You had some marketing folks, you had some folks from business development, from other sectors. How did you go about creating opportunities for them in the work that you are doing?
I think it's not just at that point, it's not about the opportunity. It's more about having the awareness of what we can do and build a connection and connect the dots with what their domain is and how cyber can be applied to their domain. So I think first thing is we have a lot of many students from industrial engineering. And we never realized that that's a separate stream, which we definitely know now that it needs cybersecurity a lot, but we would consider it more of electrical engineering or mechanical engineering. But we realized that industrial engineering students are really interested in this.
Absolutely.
And then we slowly started realizing law has, there are students from law who are interested in privacy and they want to learn cybersecurity laws. And then there is a forensics department who want to collaborate on forensics, how the tech can be collaborated, like in their approach of investigations, what we can do together in that. So there were some of the things we were not even prepared for. We got caught as a surprise. But the thing is, I think the right people join you in the forces when you are doing something. They just need a platform, and then they come to you, and then they find the opportunity. I realized that over time.
It's interesting when you open the door, the kind of ideas that sometimes walk in, and it's important that our audience also recognize that when you start these initiatives, you have to be reachable. You have to be someone that is accessible, and it is time consuming, and it is a significant effort that you have to put in because there are naysayers, there are people who may not necessarily value your time, but you've got to have that patience. And when you're trying to build a culture, you really need to own it and be that postcard for it. So I really appreciate all the time that you put in and really emphasizing this is not an easy task. It takes commitment, it takes time, and it can be quite difficult at times. We've got another 25 minutes, and we've sort of spoken about the science and the art of how you build a culture, right? And why cyberculture was important to you, the importance of symbols, the importance of communication, the importance of celebration and recognition. I want to just take one topic, which, Marilyn, we were discussing at the periphery with Mayor Collier and Carol Todd, the mother of Amanda Todd, and Medha Saraya. We were talking about the importance of we need to talk more and more about these issues because major things are happening in the online space that are impacting society that people are not even aware of. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the dangers that we are trying to protect and arm our communities with. Marilyn, you've been a big advocate for mental health. And you've been really, really pushing on elements of, we don't need to surveil our community, but we need to understand that people exhibit traits online or people are targeted online, which can have an impact on their health. This has been an important topic for you. Can you talk a little bit about why this is an important topic and how is your work impacting the lives of people in Ajax?
Well, Facebook and Instagram have good abilities to connect people globally, but they also don't give a true reflection of who people are. And so there's this constant trying to be like that other person. I mean, I love the Instagram pictures where the true Instagram picture and then the fake Instagram picture, and you think, wow, that is a big difference, right? And so people are looking at these forms of social media, and they're comparing themselves. And if you're already struggling with self-esteem issues, and you're already struggling with depression, and you see my Facebook page, and I'm always happy, I mean, I'm always doing things with my family, and we're always smiling, and we're always, if you are living in my house, that is not my Facebook page, I'll tell you that right now. But that's what's out there, and that is what I think people frame their whole being on what other people's successes have been. And I think that it's been kind of sad, because especially in the last 12 weeks, where we've all been in isolation, and we've all been sitting in front of a screen more than ever before. Some of us haven't had good experiences through COVID. Some of us have lost our jobs, and we're still sitting in front of a screen. And mental illness has just skyrocketed over the last 6 months. Domestic abuse has skyrocketed. And, we're really going to have to work with our community to help them come back to health again, whether that's health in online awareness, or if it's health in just inside their own heads. We're going to have to be able to be that source of really just help. Our seniors, we offered programs, Seniors on Phones, where we had people in our staff just calling seniors, check on them to make sure they're okay. Anything you need, groceries you need. Seniors Without Walls. We had, programming happening online for seniors, so that they didn't get trapped in something that was there that they didn't know about, or some kind of scam that was going on, and helping them to maneuver themselves through where they would normally be able to go to the seniors community center and be with their friends. They had to have another option. So I'm not sure I think that's what you were looking for, but
I think
sorry, go ahead.
No, I think what you've hinted at over here is this aspect of, you have to, when most people think about programming and they think about education, they think of very formal kind of approaches. You enroll into a program, you buy a seat at a college, you go and you get admission, and you have to be rated, and you have to be scored, and you have to prove yourself to be worthy to sit in Ali's class. And I'm telling you, my students will say, anyone can sit in Ali's class, but there is a process that you have to follow, right? But what you've done is you've broken those walls, right? And part of culture is about breaking things and rebuilding and creating something new. The programs that you created, like Seniors Without Walls, or even just, the sessions we did at the library for seniors with cybersecurity, you were able to take complex concepts and break through the bureaucracy and break through the red tape. And I think that's what's allowed for these conversations to happen. But Marilyn, if I can just use you an example and then bring Heather into the conversation, you've always looked at mental health as how it impacts your community and how it impacts your stakeholders. And through cybersecurity, you've got to think about new areas that shape our mental health. But I'm going to take this question and reverse it a little bit to Heather's. Heather, the more and more you put yourself out there as an advocate, as a community champion around cybersecurity, you also have to face a lot of criticism. You also have to deal with a lot of issues and your own mental health. How do you manage to balance that in terms of getting the word out there, but also ensuring that you are taken care of and that you have what you need in order to push your message forward? Heather?
That's a loaded question, Ali.
For sure, yeah.
First of all, I will say that when you believe in something, you make, you've heard me say this before, you make time for it, and you manage to, all the adversity that might go along with it, or the self-doubt, you manage to overcome that. Like you, I like sayings. So I'll share a piece of advice that one of my sisters once shared with me. And that was, as long as you're having more good days than bad, you're doing all right. So, as long as I'm not faced with adversity every day in my work and including my work in the community, I will continue to do what I do. Much to the chagrin of some of my friends and family who might be tired of hearing me talk about cybersecurity and trying to educate them on it. But I honestly believe that we as professionals or academics all have a responsibility to share our knowledge with others, and honestly, to be relentless about it.
And I agree 100% on the sharing aspect. I guess, the saying sharing is caring. I get it. But there's also a strategy to how you share. And you need to know what information to bring out at what time. There's a timeliness factor that goes into building the right kind of culture. And Ikjot, this takes me to you. You've been raising the flag, not of concern, but of caution and of contemplation around our adoption of smart mobility devices, autonomous vehicles, so on and so forth. And you've been talking about it very, very eloquently on numerous stages. However, there is that moment where you can actually spook people out, and people can inherit a sense of fear that, is this all the Teslas of the world and our, the walking cane that we have, or the smart cane that we have? You can ultimately spook a lot of fear where people become reclusive. How do you make sure that you're not tapping into the fears of people when talking about cybersecurity, but tapping more into the hope and the potential? Ikjot?
So that reminds me of one of the incidents that happened. First time when I was, again, I was in that phase where I was just head down working on my dissertation, was not able to communicate well, I think, at that time. And I realized that some people got spooked again. Again, it's like scary to think about you're going to connect vehicles and you're not sure if they are going to get all your location information with respect to privacy, or there's something wrong, some hacking going on your connected vehicles, and it can get crashed, right? Both of those are scary, both sides. Over time, I realized that I don't want to scare them. What I wanted to do was inspire the ownership, so that they can know that if they are going to say yes to certain things as a customer,
Yep.
then they should be aware of what's going on right now, so that they have a saying of what's going on right now. And so I started educating them where you can go and put your comments and what you can do about it today, so that in 10 years, how you can change this and how your concerns would be heard. Because if you would not say yes or no today to certain things, then you would eventually be forced, or there will be mandate otherwise, right? And we do not want a mandate over time, which you don't want to have that kind of mandate where you don't want to share your information, right?
Yep.
For example, the COVID app, there was a lot of privacy concerns, but it took some time because people were showing their concerns. That's exactly what I wanted to say, that if we can inspire the ownership and can give them sense of responsibility, even though it will be built somewhere else, but you have a saying in it.
Absolutely.
So that's what I started doing.
And sort of in this aspect of having a say, and in keeping with the images that were running before the session, Malala Yousafzai, right? She always says that you realize the value of your voice when it's suspended and when it's taken away from you, right? And you want to wrestle that control. So I really like the way you sort of move from fear and hope to ownership. And when you own something, you feel like you control it. And that sense of empowerment, which I think is integral to building the right culture. We have another 12 or so minutes, and I want to now come to a little bit about the responsibility that each of you now have taken on. And I know that the questions that we're getting are really reflective on how a lot of folks out there, we have listeners from Brazil, from Cameroon, from Nigeria, from Australia, from New Zealand. And Dubai as well. We've got listeners from quite across, and many people who are wanting to start something in terms of a community of cyber, or at least start a practice, not in their society as a whole, but maybe just in their business, right? Marilyn, I'll start off with you. Is one of the things that in our friendship for the last year and a half, since we met at, I think it was April 1st or 4th, 2019, when I gave the talk on the Dabbawala system and how that relates to AI. Since then, and your own engagements, I've noticed that you found yourself in new spaces. You've been speaking at more conferences. You were at the head seat at the Canadian Women in Cyber Conference. You found yourself on different boards now. You've been speaking at chamber events as well on new topics. How has that made you feel, the evolution that you've experienced after getting into cyber? What's that done to your career, and what's that done to your mindset as well?
It is empowering, really. I don't ever claim to be an expert in anything, especially in this field for sure. But it is empowering to see the journey that sometimes I took starting in April last year, and you put me on the panel of the women in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
I was like, what are you talking about, me? And it was great. It was I realized I actually do have something to give. I do have some. I add value to it in a different way in this field, and it's been really empowering. Even just to I know when we were at CISO, again, another worldwide forum, that first time ever in Canada in Niagara Falls. It was just an honor to be attending that session. I learned so much in that session. It was just such a great one. But being introduced right there to IceBR, and then having them come into the village, into the innovation village, and with their escape rooms, and it was just so cool to see that simple introduction at one conference and how that kind of progressed into coming into our innovation village. And hopefully we'll be able to get back into hands-on education and training soon.
Yeah.
And I certainly want to be a part of anything that is going on. I'm thrilled to be part of this. I'm amazed really at how Maddie and CyberX and their team have been able to put this together, and people from around the world are involved in this conference. Like it's mind blowing, really. Like on Monday, people from Africa were online. Like it was crazy. It's very exciting.
And I think and more that I've engaged with you, and we're thinking through about creating a cyber culture. Often people, and not to sort of speak derogatory of your position, but they wonder if they can have any impact. And I always hold true to a statement from my grandfather, which has always been, it's too early to say it's too late, especially when you want to realize the movement. And I really appreciate the fact that, and you've been honest, right, about it in your illustrious career, coming towards sort of, thinking about, all right, what's next, and, calming down a little. You've taken on new initiatives literally by the horn. So I thank you for that positioning. It requires a sense of strength. And I want to sort of work with that strength that you need to be a part of these different, how these initiatives have impacted you, by going back to Heather. And Heather, you've led many initiatives. And not only have I seen you on stage speaking and moderating high-profile panels, I've seen you behind the registration desk giving away registration tickets and giving away T-shirts as well. This experience, for lack of a better word, has really humbled you to realize that a true leader does not delegate the team. A true leader is the team. Can you talk a little bit about the humbling experience of being a part of all of these movements?
Well, I mean, I believe that you just do what has to be done, right? When I keep going back to, when you believe in something, you do what needs to be done. And, initially you may start out on your own or with a small team, but as you spread the word about your mission, if you are able to make people believe in your mission, the mission grows, and then you find yourself in a situation where you have a large group of volunteers or a large following of your mission, right? So take, for example, we started the morning talking about women in cybersecurity, or WiCyS, and WiCyS started very small, with a conference of about 350 people the first year. Has since grown into a nonprofit organization that runs year-round and is not only in the U.S. anymore, but has expanded into other countries, including Canada, India, Australia, and UK, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. So, I don't know if I've really answered your question, Ali, but like I said, I mean, put it this way. I think that when you believe in something, you can't be afraid to roll up your sleeves yourself, especially when you're first starting out.
No, I agree with you. And with reference to whether you've answered my question or not, I think this is probably one of the tougher questions that I've asked in all siberXchange, because humility is something that gets done, not something that's talked about. So I can appreciate how hard it is, but trust me when I say this, for budding folks like myself, seeing you both on stage and then behind the scenes, lifting chairs and whatever have you, that says something, and don't let that go unnoticed. We've got a couple of more minutes, and I'll turn it to Ikjot, and I'll provide a little bit of a context here and give you some breathing room here as you take this in. Part of the reason why we hold, as an advisory, we encourage Marilyn to maintain a Women in Cyber track is not because we just want to talk about, all right, what do women bring to the table, because the aspect of diversity needs to be understood. And diversity of thought, but also diversity of expectation. Forgive me if I've made assumptions here, and I'm open to being corrected. You came to Canada. You have roots back in India. You have roots that are multicultural. In all fairness, how has your work been received by family, and how has it been received by folks back home? Has it created a sense of, wow, there's more to going to Canada than certain jobs that we expect, and our women can become professors and can lead initiatives and can lead men as well. How has that work been received?
So actually, that's very personal to me, and that's actually one of the reasons I did it. I come from a place where, if it's from India, it's specifically from a region where girls are not. They are getting married early. They are not getting proper education, and there's a lot of problems there with respect to females, right? And I wanted to change that perception, and I wanted to tell them, and not just like one hop from me, but like multiple hops as well. And I realized I changed my colleges and universities over time, and I've been at different places. But that was constantly same problem. And I was told that you should not be doing this. Why are you still studying? And that's another issue that you run into when you're coming from that culture.
Yep.
So once they now see me, I have done this, I think that it brings a sense of empowerment to people or younger generation, and they can see me, and they can at least have a role model to follow up. So whenever I was at my downtimes in dissertation itself, I used to think, no, I'm not just doing it for myself. Maybe somebody's looking up to me, and so let's do it for them. Absolutely. So if you just have that stance, then I think we can do a lot more. And I think so. If I get back to how it's being perceived there, I'm not completely sure about that.
Fair.
Because I'm just so focused on what I'm doing right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and I do apologize. I do like to sort of come up with questions as we're talking and picking up on keywords. I know I've hit a sensitive note there, but I appreciate the strength. And for our listeners, and Marilyn and Heather, I'm not sure how familiar you are with some of the cultural references that Ikjot made. There's quite a lot of literature within Canada itself that can tell you about how cultures can have an impact on an education experience, not just back home, but here in Canada as well. And there are numerous cases which we can talk about in the green room later on. So Ikjot, I really appreciate that you've brought to attention the fact that culture is not just about protecting a way of life. It's really about giving some folks a new lease on life all together. So thank you for having the courage to come out about that. We have a few more minutes, and I want to go to Heather, and then we'll go to Marilyn. And Heather, one of the things that you've been really pushing for is, and this is prior to all of the movements around Black Lives Matters, you've always been very cognizant about not just gender, but race and ethnicity. And you've constantly made the effort to, and I can pay testimony to this, is if you've had a seat on a panel and a member from, let's say, another community, another country, has sort of come up and said, hey, I'd love to participate, you often give up your seat. You often take a back seat. Why has it been important for you to internationalize the conversation around cyber cultures?
Because, at the risk of sounding corny, cybersecurity is everybody's business. Mm-hmm. And it's not just a problem for women. It's not just a problem for Canadians. It's not, it's not just a problem for the country of India. It is it's a challenge for the world. And it is important that everyone, no matter where they're from, what educational background they have, where they've spent time throughout their lives, et cetera. It is important that everyone has a voice, has a seat at the table, has the opportunity to learn and to participate in the conversation. And I am often heard saying this, and that is that life would be really boring if we all thought the same and took the same approach to our work and to our lives. And so, I for one enjoy having conversations with people from diverse backgrounds, and I like to understand where they come from. And what makes them who they are, and so that's why I truly believe it's important, like I said, for everyone to have a seat at the table and to have opportunity. And by the way, that's what Ali, you and I spoke about this during Power Hour last week. The silver lining, right? The silver lining that I have chosen to see in all of this pandemic that we've been facing is that we do have the beautiful internet at our disposal and the opportunity to host conferences like this one virtually that now have actually opened up the reach globally. We through a conference like siberXchange, we don't have any geographic boundaries.
Yep.
The only limitations really are access to technology in some cases. So
absolutely,
I don't know. I choose to take that positive approach or positive way of thinking around all of this.
And I couldn't agree with you with any more conviction. People laugh at us because we're different. We laugh at them because they're all the same. So in keeping in line with our poetic exchanges, I'll leave. We've got another 2 minutes, and Marilyn, very quickly, if we can just talk about, as a result of you engaging in promoting cyber awareness, so on and so forth, you've actually built bridges. You've got communities to talk to one another, different groups to now see what they can learn from one another. What's that experience been like for you?
Well, especially with the whole Cyber Olympics coming into Ajax, it also very much promoted Durham region, and enabled all of us to be able to bring awareness of cybersecurity through those games. And I think that each of the municipalities has their own unique spin on how they're educating everyone. But I think we all realize that by raising the awareness of cyber threats, training our youth, and protecting our seniors, it has unlimited return on our investment. So regardless if it's Pickering or it's Whitby I think we're all coming to that understanding of training and bringing this awareness to everyone.
Fantastic. Well, ladies, we have just under 50 seconds, and I know you've all had, Heather, you've been on multiple panels, Ikjot, I know your work as well, and Marilyn. It's a critical time right now in our province, in our region, as we're dilly-dallying between opening but also monitoring the numbers. So I know all of you are extremely caught up, but I do want to thank you for taking the time. And, in the previous session, and I want to relate the two because I've made this very clear, is that I decided to call this session Cyber Aware for a reason. When you know about a problem, you simply know about it. When you're aware about a problem, you do something about it. And that awareness that you've created has allowed us to do different things. When I closed the previous session, rather when I started it, I made it very clear that one of the problems that we have, especially when you talk about women in cyber and the history of women, it's his story. And it's important for us to create forums for her story. And I appreciate the fact that you build that narrative with us. In keeping in line with how we started off this conversation with Malala Yousafzai, Not only did she talk about the role of education in killing the ideology, she reminded us that if one man can change the world, why not one woman? And I appreciate how each of you have taken steps in your own individual ways to change the world and create a collective cyber-aware community to change the world that we live in today. Thank you very much for your time. I'll see you in the green room. And to our audience, have a wonderful evening. Take care.
Thank you, Ali.